Something unbelievable just happened inside the heart of British power. Parliament was live, cameras were rolling, voices were rising, and then everything stopped. Not a vote, not a protest, not a procedural delay, a direct royal intervention. King Charles stepped in, Parliament froze, and Keir Starmer stood there, silent, stunned, unable to move. What you're about to hear is not normal politics. This was a moment that shattered every rule Britain thought still existed. For weeks, tension had been building behind Westminster's historic walls. Arguments were growing sharper, tempers were shorter. Every debate felt like it could explode at any moment, and today it finally did. Parliament was deep into a heated exchange when something nobody expected happened. Mid-session, mid-argument, live on air, the flow of power was suddenly ripped away from elected hands. Without warning, proceedings were halted. MPs stopped shouting. Papers dropped. The chamber fell into an unnatural silence. This wasn't a recess. This wasn't a technical issue. This was an interruption from the very top of the British state. King Charles, whose role is meant to be distant, ceremonial and neutral, had stepped directly into the arena. Keir Starmer was caught completely off guard. 1 second he was locked into the fight, pushing his position, reading the room. The next second he was frozen. Cameras captured it clearly. No words. No movement, no response. His face said everything. Shock, confusion, and something else. Fear of what this moment could mean. MPs glanced at each other, unsure how to react. Some leaned forward, others sat back, as if bracing for impact. This wasn't just unusual, it felt wrong. For decades, Britain has operated on an unspoken rule: the monarch does not interfere. Power flows through Parliament until now. The interruption sent a clear message. Whatever chaos had been brewing behind closed doors had crossed a line, and the fact that it reached the king himself tells us this wasn't just another noisy debate. This was a crisis. As the chamber remained suspended, the weight of history pressed down on everyone present. Viewers watching live could feel it. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't planned. This was raw, unfolding power struggle, caught in real time. And the most chilling part? No one knew what would happen next. This moment wasn't just about Starmer. It wasn't just about Parliament. It was about whether Britain's political system had just shifted quietly, suddenly, and forever. And as silence filled the room, one truth became impossible to ignore. When the king steps in, something has gone very, very wrong. As the interruption settled in, the atmosphere inside Parliament changed completely. What moments earlier was loud, aggressive and chaotic turned into something far more dangerous: uncertainty. MPs were no longer arguing policy, they were searching for answers. When power pauses without explanation, fear fills the gap, and that fear spread fast. The shock on Keir Starmer's face was impossible to hide. This was not the reaction of a man prepared for what was coming. His usual confidence vanished, his posture stiffened, his eyes locked forward as if waiting for instructions that never came. In British politics, where every word is rehearsed and every move calculated, this silence spoke louder than any speech ever could. Behind the scenes, panic was growing. Senior figures whispered urgently. Officials moved with visible tension. The interruption had triggered something deeper than a simple delay. It exposed fractures that many suspected, but few believed would surface so publicly. The system was no longer operating as planned. The rules everyone relied on were suddenly unclear. Viewers watching live felt it instantly. Social media erupted within seconds. People asked the same question again and again. Why now? What forced the king to act? For a monarch known for restraint to step in at this moment suggested that warnings had been ignored, red lines crossed, and pressure had reached breaking point. This wasn't about ceremony. This wasn't symbolic. This felt like an emergency brake being pulled at full speed. Whatever Parliament was heading toward had become dangerous enough to require intervention from the highest level. And that alone terrified those who understood the implications. Starmer's silence became the focus of everything. Critics saw weakness, supporters saw shock. But neutral observers saw something else entirely. A leader unprepared for a system suddenly shifting beneath his feet. In politics, perception is reality, and this perception was brutal. The man aiming to lead the country looked powerless in the moment that mattered most. Around the chamber, MPs realised they were no longer in control of the narrative. The interruption had stripped away the illusion that Parliament always holds the final word. A line had been crossed, and no one knew how far the consequences would reach. Would debates resume? Would authority be reasserted? Or had something irreversible just begun? The silence dragged on, heavy and uncomfortable. Every second felt longer than the last. This wasn't drama created for headlines. This was real instability unfolding in front of millions. And the longer it lasted, the clearer it became that Britain was witnessing more than a shocking moment. It was witnessing a warning. A warning that the system was under strain, a warning that leadership was being tested, and a warning that the chaos everyone feared was no longer theoretical. It had arrived. As news of the interruption spread beyond Westminster, the shock began to deepen into something far more serious. This was no longer just a moment inside Parliament. It had become a national event. Screens across the country replayed the same frozen images again and again. MPs silent, the chamber halted, and Keir Starmer standing motionless as authority slipped from his grasp. Political analysts struggled to explain what viewers had just witnessed. There was no modern precedent for it. The monarchy is designed to exist above daily politics, not inside it. And yet here it was, stepping directly into the machinery of government. That alone sent a chilling signal through every institution connected to power. Inside Parliament, the emotional shift was unmistakable. Confidence drained from the room. MPs who moments earlier had been shouting now avoided eye contact. Some stared at their desks. Others scanned the chamber as if searching for reassurance. None came. The interruption had broken momentum, but more importantly, it had broken certainty. Keir Starmer's position looked weaker by the minute. Leadership in times of crisis demands control, clarity, and presence. What the nation saw instead was hesitation. The cameras captured a man caught between authority and obedience, unsure which direction to move. That image will not fade quickly. In British politics, moments like this define careers. Behind closed doors, speculation exploded. Was Parliament about to be overridden? Had confidential warnings been ignored? Were legal limits being tested? No official answers emerged, and that silence only fed the anxiety. When institutions stop explaining themselves, trust collapses. The public reaction was immediate and intense. Supporters of the monarchy praised the intervention as necessary. Others called it alarming, even dangerous. The country split not along party lines, but along a deeper question: who really holds power when the system is under stress? This moment exposed a harsh reality. Britain's political stability depends on restraint. It depends on lines not being crossed. And once crossed, they cannot simply be erased. Whether justified or not, the interruption marked a shift. The balance that had held for generations suddenly looked fragile. For Starmer, the damage was already done. Even without words, the scene told its own story. A leader frozen at the centre of chaos does not project strength, it projects vulnerability. And in a time when the country is demanding certainty, vulnerability is unforgiving. As Parliament remained stalled, the sense of danger grew. Not physical danger, but constitutional danger. The kind that reshapes nations slowly, quietly, and permanently. People felt it instinctively. Something fundamental had been shaken. This was no longer about a single session, a single debate, or a single interruption. It was about what happens next. Would power return to normal channels, or had the door been opened to a new kind of authority? As the silence continued, one truth became unavoidable. Britain had crossed into unknown territory, and there was no clear path back. As the final weight of the interruption settled, the true consequences began to surface. This was not a moment that could be undone with a statement or smoothed over with procedure. The damage was already embedded in public memory. Britain had watched its power structure hesitate, and hesitation at the top changes everything below it. Confidence in Parliament took a visible hit. People began questioning whether elected leaders were still fully in control or merely operating within limits they no longer understood. When authority pauses without explanation, doubt replaces trust, and once doubt spreads, it is almost impossible to contain. The interruption had not answered questions, it had multiplied them. Keir Starmer's silence continued to echo long after the cameras cut away. In politics, timing is everything, and this timing was brutal. A leader does not need to speak loudly to show strength, but he must act decisively. In that moment, action never came. What remained was an image of uncertainty that opponents will not forget and supporters will struggle to defend. The wider political system felt the shockwave. Ministers, advisors and officials now faced a new reality, one where long-standing boundaries appeared flexible. That realisation alone altered behaviour. Decisions became cautious, language became guarded. Fear of triggering another intervention hung over every move like a shadow. Public debate intensified. Some argued the interruption prevented something worse. Others warned it set a dangerous example. But both sides agreed on one thing. The system had been tested and it had bent. Whether it would snap or reset remained unknown. History shows that moments like this do not fade quietly. They return later as turning points. They reshape expectations. They change how power is exercised. And they redefine what is considered normal. Britain had entered that phase, the aftermath, where consequences unfold slowly but relentlessly. For many watching, this was the clearest sign yet that the country is drifting through instability without a clear anchor. Economic pressure, social tension, political division, all of it now felt connected to this single frozen moment. When leadership falters, chaos does not always explode. Sometimes it creeps. The interruption did not end the crisis. It confirmed it. It exposed how close the system is to its limits and how fragile its balance has become. And for once fragility is visible, it can no longer be ignored. As Parliament prepared to move forward, nothing felt normal anymore. The rules were the same on paper, but the trust behind them had cracked. Britain was left standing at a crossroads, uncertain which path it had already begun to walk. One thing is now undeniable. This was not just a shocking interruption, it was a signal. And signals like this do not appear unless something deep within the system is already breaking.